What does a beautiful future look like to you?
You can flip a negative mood on its head.
This was a talk that was all over the place, but then New York, you are all over the place.
There are experiences that you just don't get anywhere else.
Welcome to our discussion on HBO Max's Love Life. I have to tell you all, I binged this in one sitting. And the last time I did that was Handmaid's Tale. So I had a very different experience coming out of this show. I just cried, I laughed, I cringed. I think it was such a relatable story. So I just want to introduce you all. First up, we have Anna Kendrick, who is the star of the show, who plays Darby and is also an executive producer. We also have Bridget Bedard, who is executive producer and co-showrunner, and Sam Boyd, the creator, co-showrunner, and executive producer. Yeah, round of applause. First of all, how are you all?
We can't do it for ourselves. We're good. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm so excited to be here with you all. I want to start with you, Sam, because this is your baby. You wrote the pilot, so I want to know what inspired you to write this pilot, and what was that writing experience like?
So for me, it really started with the structure and this idea before there was any semblance of Darby as a character or really any of the details. It was just this idea that I had that, you know, looking at one person sort of doing a deep dive character study where it's broken up into these pieces, with each piece exploring a different interpersonal connection that this person has, you know, over the course of their life and following them over time, that would be a really cool way just to explore a person and explore a life. And so, you know, I kind of worked backwards from there, and ended up writing this pilot that I kind of thought about for a long time. I had the idea, honestly, maybe, you know, 3 or 4 years ago. There was this kind of vague notion, and I even at one point thought maybe it would be like a book of short stories or something was the initial idea, just with each chapter being, you know, the name of the person that they're in the relationship with. And you know, ultimately it became this television show, and the pilot is something that just gestated as I was saying for you know, a while, until it kind of all poured out of me, and then I wrote it pretty quickly once the sort of details calcified in my head, and we were off from there.
I was kind of shocked when I found out you were a man, to be honest with you, because I thought you did so well from writing from the perspective of a female. So what was the hardest part for you to connect to Darby, given that you are a man?
Right. Thank you. Well, you know, I think the thing there is it's a lot of undue credit, because for me from the beginning, it was just about getting it on its feet and bringing into the fold many talented women who have experienced life as a woman and can speak to that experience authentically, in a way that obviously I never could. And so, you know, when I wrote the pilot, I'm always trying to kind of get inside the head of the character. And I think especially with the kind of stuff that I often write, where it's pretty close to my world or my life, and I'm kind of drawing on things that have happened to me or to my friends, you know, it's helpful, because I often am just thinking that a female character is going to be more complex and more compelling to me as I, you know, try to build the character. But also that, you know, it's nice to have that distance where it's not just me writing about myself. I feel like if it was a male character, it would make it some kind of, you know, annoying autobiographical thing. And when I sort of had the idea for this character of Darby and knew that I was going to want to explore a female perspective again, it just was about, you know, getting to work with Anna, getting to work with Bridget and you know, and the other actresses and the amazing female writers in our writers' room to, you know, to sort of hand it over and, you know, let them tell me what it's really like instead of thinking that I know.
When you were writing it, was Anna the first actress you thought of that came to mind?
Was I the first
Of course.
thought of?
Of course.
It was Anna or no one?
I actually don't know any other actresses. That's the thing. I've never seen any movies or shows, so I was kind of just flying blind. I mean, from like, first of all, I guess when I was writing it, I never thought that anyone approaching Anna's level of talent or, fame would even deign to read the script. So that was sort of, what'd you say?
I really was slumming it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I didn't realize that we were going to sort of be able to capitalize on her low standards until later. But yeah, I mean, you just always hope when you're writing something that someone as incredible as Anna will spark to it and make it, more than just a PDF on your computer. And so I just feel lucky every day that that's the way it happened.
Amazing. And Bridget, you are an experienced showrunner, so I'd love to hear about your perspective as a woman in the writer's room. What did you bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, I am a woman.
Yes.
What did you bring to the table, Bridget, besides a vagina? Don't rest on that. Come on. Are you talented with
Lots of good lunch advice. Good office furniture. So Sam had written the pilot before I came on board, and so just to give him back credit that he deserves. I came on board based on the pilot, and based on how sweet and lovely and heartfelt it was. And I do remember meeting. It's funny that you say the book of short stories, Sam, because I do remember being like, I'm going to choose very carefully my next project, and then Sam was like, well, it's like a book of short stories. And then he mentioned Alice Munro, and I'm like, I'm in. He mentioned Alice Munro in a meeting. No one's ever done that. So I came on board. And then as far as what I brought, I mean, obviously I brought experience because Sam had run a room before. And so I kind of helped him structure the whole season and arc a character. And that was something, it's just a skill that you learn over time. And then a lot of it, I actually don't know how to not write autobiographically. I'm the opposite. I'm like, if I haven't really experienced, I don't know how to write it. And so a lot of the things in there were things that have happened to me, but then by the time they were written by other writers, or we had just pitched on it long enough, it became something else. But it comes from a place of experience for sure for me.
Yes, I read that the scene where Darby's pulling up the stroller up the subway was inspired by something that you went through. Is that right?
Yes, it's all true. It's a horror show. Pulling a stroller on the subway. Literally, they're because I actually had my baby in Los Angeles, but when I was in New York, we had to have a stroller on the subway, and it's people are fighting for the line to the elevator, and all these women find each other with their strollers, and I was like, this has to be in the show.
I feel like whenever I saw parents in New York, I wanted to give them a silent salute, because I think it's just the hardest place in the world to navigate being a parent.
Yeah, I was like, how is anyone doing this? How is anyone doing this?
It's hard enough as an individual. So I can't imagine.
As a young body 22-year-old.
And Anna, this is your first full-length scripted TV series, which is quite extraordinary. So what was special about this project that made you want to jump on the silver screen?
So many things, but I do want to just say quickly, I totally agree with you that when I see parents in New York, I want to salute them from a distance and not get involved. I mean, God bless you, and I wish I could help, but I just don't have it in me. So then when Bridget was like, yeah, I wrote all these scenes about how tough it is to deal with a baby in New York, I was like, well, that means I have to deal with it. Okay. Sorry.
No, that was
the pilot was such a breath of fresh air. I feel like that's such a cliche, but I especially I had read a bunch of things that were so promising. The hottest thing in town. I'm like, this is garbage. And then it was such confident writing. It was. I feel like so often I read something and I end up kind of trying to talk myself into it, because there are redeeming qualities about this script, and I could make it work. And if you had the right cast and blah, 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 there might be something here. And it was I had the experience of going oh, you could just kind of show up and half your work is done for you because the tone and the world is so strong, so honest. And it didn't feel like, oh, okay, I can find a way to make this scene work. It just felt like this scene works. And of course, the irony is that when that's the case, like, then you attract talent like Zoë Chao and Kingsley Ben-Adir and, you know, Scoot McNairy and all these amazing people, you know, of all these different levels of experience that we like managed to be blessed to have on the show. So it was just kind of an embarrassment of riches that kind of starts as this avalanche because the thing that you start with is so strong.
Absolutely. It felt like I was watching you and your real life friends. Like it felt very organic, the cast, as I was watching, and Zoë Chao is extraordinary. So how did you get to that level of comfortability with your castmates?
I mean, Zoe, we did kind of just get lucky. Like she and I got along really well, and there was just a really fast trust. I think sometimes even with people where I have a lot of on-screen chemistry, shut up. There can be like a little bit of competition, you know, and it just felt like we were in such a safe environment that we could just kind of go like, you take the scene, no, you take the scene, you know, and or you try something different, and it was just easy. I don't know. We sometimes it's just luck, you know. And when you don't have luck, you kind of gotta roll up your sleeves and do some of the work. But with the friend group, you know, with Zoe and Sasha and Peter, I was just like, oh my god, this is just. I wish the show was just about the roommates. Unfortunately, it's called Love Life, and it has to be about other people. It really was like, oh, I'm so happy that like the people who are going to be on this journey the entire time are so solid, because especially when we started, I became acutely aware that every week I was going to be dealing with someone completely new. And no matter how many things I had seen them in that they were wonderful in, I had no idea how we were going to interact. So it felt really good to have obviously not just such a strong writing team, but such a great set of recurring cast members.
That's nice. It feels like it was a one team, one dream kind of scenario.
Definitely.
So all the characters are so relatable. I mean, one episode, I'm like, I'm such a Darby. And then I was like, no, I'm a Sarah. And then Darby's mum is so my mum. So I'd love to hear which one of the characters did you all relate to the most?
Danny Two Phones.
I loved him. I cruised on him big time.
Truly, and he was so wonderful, and that truly became like the running joke on set as we were like in the thick of filming and hadn't totally figured out like who the final person was going to be. The running joke on set and all the crew and everything was like, it has to be Danny Two Phones. Bring back Danny Two Phones. Like the least compatible characters, but like he is so lovable and Darby's lovable, and yeah.
So are you a Darby, Anna?
If anyone, if she's not, who is would be my question, because she literally played Darby. That would be crazy if she wasn't. I think, you know, maybe that was what, I don't know.
It's called acting, Sam.
Fair enough. I don't know, but you know, I think part of it is that so much of the process was, you know, something that we tried to make as collaborative as possible on every level, so that you know, we were writing as we were going because it was a TV show, but we also used that opportunity to listen to the thing as it was coming to life and to see what was working and lean into that stuff. And so when you see, you know, when you see chemistry, like, you know, the chemistry between Anna and Zoe, and you lean into that, you know, it's really powerful. And I think also just with Darby as a character, there were so many aspects of the character that kind of complicated her in a really rich way that just came inherently from Anna in a way that we never even had to talk about, because it was just part of her bringing herself to that role. And you know, that kind of transcended anything we could have ever written or imagined.
So how collaborative?
And I think as writers, I was just going to add, I think as writers, I think there's a little bit of all of us in every character. in a way. Like I think I've been Sarah, unfortunately, at times, you know, like, but not all the way to the point that Sarah got. And, you know, I've definitely been like desperate for love in my life. And I think that there, you know, like, for example, the One Night Stand episode, every single writer in the room had a story, you know, and that was just some kind of fusion of all of it by the time, you know, got finished and filmed. So I think we're spread throughout.
All that's to say, I'm definitely a Darby. Forgot to answer.
I can't wait for the BuzzFeed quiz. Like, how much Darby are you? You know, like, you know that. So how collaborative was it on set? Because you obviously come, you have a script and stuff, but what it sounds like is you all were just throwing ideas and stuff that actually happened to you in real life.
Yeah. So, well, you know, we tried to run the set in this way where you kind of split the difference. I think there's often stuff that leans heavily on improvisation where it always felt to me like you're, as the writer, not doing the work to earn the opportunity to be working with that actor, and you're kind of leaning on them to write the movie. And we wanted to not do that, but still give the actors the freedom that they have in situations like that, so that we would go off and write these scripts and work really hard on them and go, okay, we've thought about this as much as we could up until this point, and we've, you know, done the best we can. We're really proud of this, but also let's, you know, find the magic together, and let's kind of like, you know, make sure everything is working together. And just, it's this sort of thing where it's like, you do all this work so that you can not throw it out, but so that you're able to find the best version of the thing together, as opposed to just us going, hey, we haven't really thought about this, let's improvise, you know, or whatever. And that looseness, I think, was really important for the quality of the performances, and also obviously to, you know, improve the writing and improve the kind of spontaneity or just the life of the show, you know, wanting it to feel alive, all that stuff.
So is improvising something that is quite rare on set for you, Anna? Is it something you enjoy, or is it something that normally doesn't happen that often?
Well, it's interesting to hear, you know, what improv sort of means to Sam, like what his experience of it is, because like as a writer, because obviously as an actor, there's something similar that happens where you want to be able to play and try things. You know, it's a little restricting when somebody wants you to be word perfect, and equally when there's a sense of like, oh, the only time that the director, writer, producers, you know, whatever the powers that be seem happy is when we're just doing nothing that was written, and that kind of makes me lose a little bit of faith, because it feels like, oh, you guys are responding to what feels good right now because you don't know what's going to feel right for the piece ultimately. So it feels like, you know, they're just getting these dopamine hits, and it has nothing to do with like what's actually correct for the characters and, you know, the piece. But I feel like we found like a really good balance. It was that perfect sweet spot of like, yeah, you can try, of course you can try stuff, but it never like went off the rails to like, I always know it's gone too far when everybody's looking around going, do I say a scripted line now? Because at this point I have no idea like where we are in the scene. So should we just exit? I literally don't know what to do. So
that's a bad sign. Like, that happened a couple times for sure, but
how do you
hopefully we kept it to a minimum.
How do you run the cast when that happens, when it goes a little too far? Do you just like let it happen, or are you like, yo, Anna, let's go back on script?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's usually when I am going like this.
Oh, you're the one calling it out.
You know, the inmates are running the asylum. Like, this is not working.
Right.
The inmates are running the asylum. I love that one. So the show had a really unique structure. We start in 2012 and then we jump through different periods of really important time in Darby's life. Do you ever wonder what was happening in those parts that we didn't see? Because I mean, for me, I was thinking about Darby's wedding. I was like, did she go to the courthouse? Like, did she wear a white dress? Like, I really wanted to know what that was like. So I was wondering if any of you had those moments.
I would say, Anna, do you want to go?
No.
I would say it's funny because, like, I think definitely thinking about what it would be like to watch the show without any context, it's always fun to see those bigger moments. But one thing we were actually pretty consciously trying to do was omit them, and everything from something as big as what you're talking about, which is Darby's, marriage to Magnus, wedding to Magnus, not seeing that, all the way down to, not seeing Sarah in rehab and not seeing, not seeing the breakup between, Scoot McNairy's character and Anna's character. And just that a lot of the times we were more interested in kind of the nuances around those things and to be able to infer those things rather than leaning into them. So I guess I personally, if I ever thought of those things, I was like, let's not put those in.
I also think if we start to write them, like write a scene like the wedding at the courthouse, and it's like, I'm not even sure what new emotional information we're getting. I mean, we already know she knows that she shouldn't be marrying this person. So we would just be playing that beat again. Like, I don't know what would be new about it. Like, you see it on her face with the tattoo.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So then we would just be like, well, get rid of that scene because there's no reason to have it dramatically. And then we'd make space for other scenes that are more important.
Mm-hmm. In the way that I think, like, at first we didn't show the breakup with Augie because it's like, well, we can assume that it was like rough, but they're fine because they're going to co-parent and all that. But then there was like a really fun way to have like a funny, awkward breakup, and that scene was one of those situations where, like, on paper we couldn't really make it work, and Jen and I ended up like adding all this stuff where we were doing this like psych out, like, wait, are you fucking dumping me? And like being mad at each other, and then trying to be like, no, I'm trying to break the ice because this is awkward. This is insane that we're having this breakup and it's going so well. That's weird. And like that's like a breakup to be going too well is something kind of fun and funny, and then to have the kind of nice cliffhanger of like telling him that I'm pregnant. So yeah, I mean, as Bridget is saying, I guess it's like if there's a reason to do it because it is so strange and unique, rather than like, yeah, we can assume that breakup or that moment went exactly how we figured that it would.
I had breakup envy watching that one with Augie. I was like, I wish I've gone through a breakup like that. It was just so calm and fun and friendly. I don't know. I loved it. But the show, it really did make me reflect on like my own life and especially my dating mistakes. So if you could all go back and give your 16-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh boy.
I mean, I guess that's the thing, is like you can't learn life lessons for other people. And even I couldn't tell her shit, Yeah. Like she would just have to go through it anyway. Like I might be like, don't date this one guy. And young Anna would still find a guy that was like that because she had to learn that lesson.
Right.
Exactly.
So a lesson, you will say it like that?
Well, I think also there's something just about being young and becoming an adult. There's a certain element of what Anna's saying, which is just needing to go through those experiences that someone could, not to take your question too literally, but like someone could, hear advice and not really know it until it's happened to them, the same way that every kid ignores everything their parent ever says. And then when they're an adult, go like, oh my God, my parent always said, my dad and mom always said that.
Mom was right. Yeah.
Right. And so I think a certain, but also there's, I think a lot of that stuff, a lot of those mistakes and a lot of those situations, they obviously run the gamut, but I think for the most part, they can be, it's just kind of a fun part of being young. And I think it's something I guess I wouldn't want to rob my younger self of, but I would say, I guess, what would I say? I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I could say that would go unlistened to.
I would want to rob myself of so many bad experiences.
Yeah. There we go. I would probably just say to myself, like, chill the fuck out.
Yeah, me too. I would say slow down and be where you are. Just stop trying to be somewhere else and just be where you are and enjoy it. But I mean, I wouldn't listen.
I would tell myself that at 16, and then like, guess what? 50-year-old Anna is going to show up and I'm going to be like, what are you talking about? I need that.
I can tell myself that now too, and I still
don't follow my own damn advice.
Yeah.
So
I love it. And I love that this show it's all about love, and it's not just about love you have with a partner, it's love you have with a friend, and it's love you had with a family member. So how would you each define love to you?
Whoa.
Big one.
Whoa.
It's a good question.
But what does love
define
mean
love?
to you?
I guess I would say for me, a big part of making this show was about chasing those feelings and not knowing how to put it into words. That if I knew how to put it into words, I probably wouldn't have to make the show. You know, that kind of the show is the answer, and that it's not even about answers to questions or solutions or wisdom or revelation as much as it's just about trying to live in that feeling and trying to replicate that feeling. And I don't know. I think there's a quote that I think about all the time that's like, someone asked, this is so pretentious, oh my God. But someone asked Noam Chomsky, like, what is love, basically, right? And he's obviously much smarter than, me. And they said, what is love? And he said, I don't know, but life is empty without it, which I always thought was a nice and kind of poetic answer. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's kind of unanswerable, I guess. And that's as good an answer as I've heard. So
That's
I'm going to co-opt that.
I like that. I think when we're in love, we all do really dumb shit. So What is the most foolish thing you've done for someone you love?
It's a good question. Bridge, what do you think?
Yeah, Bridget.
Oh.
I feel like you have several answers.
I have so many foolish things I've done. I'm not even sure I was in love and I did them.
Yeah.
Well, we can roll with that. I like that.
Oh, wow. I'm going to need a minute. Let me think. I don't know, guys.
I feel like the foolish things you do aren't really for love. They're for infatuation.
Right.
Love feels to me like more calm and centered, and infatuation makes you do dumb shit.
Right.
What have you done when you're infatuated with someone?
I mean, it's words, isn't it? It's like all the cringy shit, if a guy like compliments is like, oh, that girl, like that outfit is like cool. Like, what is she? And you're like, I'm sorry, a man noticed. First of all, a man noticed an outfit on a woman, and you're like, well, that's how I dress now every day. What about the outfit did he like? I don't know. So I'll just have to replicate it in color, texture, pattern, cut, silhouette. I don't know. I'll just keep guessing forever. What a waste of my energy.
Bridget, did you have a chance to think about the most foolish thing you've done?
I don't know. This is being recorded, right? Wow.
I'll give you a little more time to think, Bridget, and tell everyone about when I was in 7th grade and I was in love with a girl, but not in love with her. I just thought I was in love with her because I was 12. And I started writing song lyrics for songs that existed in the world and had been written by other people out on loose leaf notebook paper, with like sort of complete with like mistakes that I scratched out mistakes because I didn't, actually write it, but to make it look like I had written them. And then I would tell them that I would tell her that I wrote it about her. And these would be like songs by like pop punk bands and just horrendous, horrifically embarrassing shit. And I would give them to her.
Say that you like it was like obscure enough that she wouldn't know it.
I just thought, it was like stuff that I just figured she wouldn't know. And so I plagiarized. And then at the end, after like a little bit, I finally came clean to her, and she was like, "Oh, obviously, like I knew you didn't write any of these the entire time. I was just being nice."
Well, that's so nice that you wrote that. I never received anything like that. Maybe a better question for Bridget and Anna is, did you ever receive any creepy love letters or songs written for you?
I don't know what I'm about to say, because it was one of the many horror stories that I told him when we first met. It's basically like our first like long meeting where he came to my house, and I did warn you. I was like, I'm just gonna unload on you because apparently I have no boundaries. And when you're like when I'm with another creative person, whether I should or not, I feel very safe very free. And I just like word vomited, like, here's everything that's ever happened to me. And one of the very weird and specific things that we couldn't find a place for in the show, but was truly like so cringe, was on a first date. So like I met this guy through friends, and like finally we went on like a date. The end of the date, he hands me a poem that he has written. He printed it out, actually.
It wasn't me. It was not me.
He has me a poem that he's written, and that is like printed out on regular white paper. And he has like taken a lighter and like burned the edges to make it look like old, like a pirate treasure map.
Did he put it in a bottle?
Was this a gigantic red flag? Yes. First date poem with the like making it look old, like you're doing a diorama and you're in 7th grade. Yeah, all big red flags. But did I just keep dating him until it got really creepy and weird? Yeah, I did.
That's an interesting point. Has anyone seen a red flag in a relationship and actually stopped? Because I feel like you only, I don't know. I was thinking about it after the show and I was like, nope, never stopped. Saw the red flag, kept going, and only really clearly saw them at the end of the relationship.
Well, I think, by the way, that's like to kind of what we were talking about earlier, the thing of advice to one's younger self, like no one listens anyway. So that was something that was fun in the show and funny, was to have, you know, these characters that were Darby's friends that she lived with, in you know, Sarah and Mallory and Jim. And the fact that then we were able to have them give her advice that she then didn't take was very fun and felt real to us. And you know, and that's what it's all about. It's like, you know, you see the red flag and your friends maybe don't point it out to you because they know that you like the person, or you see it yourself and you just ignore it. You're like, yeah, totally. Like, I see that red flag for sure. And then you continue dating them, obviously.
Bridget, have you seen some red flags and kept on sailing in a relationship?
She's probably got some good ones.
I did think of an anecdote. It's such an anecdote, but I did once. I was dating a guy, and very early on, he was kind of love bombing me, and he said I had like anything I mentioned, the next time he would show up. Like if I said I liked the book would be there the next time, or like I like this kind of food, it would be ordered to the house. And he said, I've got a surprise for you. And he took me to a dog fair, like a stray dog, because I had said I always wanted a dog. So what did I do instead of saying that's so sweet and then go home? No, I got a dog.
It's like Augie with the cat. I didn't even realize.
12 years later, and came home with the dog, and I'm like, I can't even take care of myself, and I have a dog just because he did a nice thing. I couldn't let him down. I don't know.
Wow. Did you name the dog after him?
No, that would have been good. I wish I had.
Missed
I love the dog. Good dog, yeah. He's a real good dog.
Oh, that's so sweet. I actually like that story. I think when it comes to dating, I think your friends especially love to give you advice, and family and whatever. You hear things like don't get too drunk and don't have sex on the first date. What has been the best and the worst piece of dating advice y'all have ever received?
I have a really I've said this before, but I have a really specific piece of advice that I was given when I was like 15 that I remember going like, this is such specific advice. Why would this ever come up? Like this exact situation that you're describing, which was if you're ever in the car with a guy, and I think it was because it was at the age where, you know, we were all learning to drive. If you're in a car with a guy and he like, lets go of the wheel to like be funny, and, you know, you're supposed to like grab the wheel and be like, oh my God, you're so bad. You know, like that's how he imagines that's going to go down. And you're actually like, yo, please don't do that. That makes me feel really unsafe and uncomfortable. And that if he like doesn't deal with that well, that's a red flag. Very specific situation. When is that going to come up? But so many times in my life, I've been like, oh, this is you letting go of the wheel. Like this is you seeing like what you can get away with. And when I say like I'm drawing a boundary, I'm really not comfortable with that. you seeing if you can kind of shame me into like, just be cool, man. What's your problem? Like, your feelings aren't valid, you know? And I wouldn't have understood all that if somebody said it to me that way, but I understood the letting go of the wheel thing, and it has come up a lot. So thanks to whoever said that. I honestly don't remember.
Excellent metaphor.
Yeah. And then the worst piece of advice was when I was like 22, I was in a cab to the airport, and it was this Russian guy, and he was like, you need to get married soon if you're 22, because otherwise men are going to wonder what's wrong with you.
I've been told that a lot, actually. I've been told like after 25, you're over the hill. You know, where you're having a baby soon, your eggs are dead, like all that sort of stuff. It's crazy. I'd love to hear from you as a male perspective here. What about you and your dating advice? Like, do men talk about stuff? I don't know.
Well, they talk. It's something that I laugh with my wife about a lot, because I do feel like men talk about it a lot less than women. I don't know if part of that is like where we are in our life, where us and other friends of ours have all kind of coupled off. So there's less of that dread of like, you know, I think definitely when I was single, there was a lot of like, oh my God, I talked to this girl for 1 second last night and like got her number, like, you know, what's going to happen, you know, and sort of concocting an entire fantasy. One of my favorites, this is secondhand, that was a bad piece of, I guess not advice, but maybe encouragement that we laugh about, that we almost put in the show, is a friend of ours who was like trying to pump another friend up to women. And she was trying to convince this woman that the person she was seeing, you know, was someone she should break up with. And she was like, baby girl. Now you see where the baby girl stuff comes from. Baby girl, you shouldn't be with him. You should be with like LeBron. Which sorry, that's a lot of build up, but that's the story. And I just always thought that was like the funniest thing, because it obviously wasn't real, but there was just like something really funny about it. And then in terms of good advice, I don't know, I'd have to think about it another second. How
about you, Bridget?
I don't know. It's been a while. I literally, all I can think of is something my mom used to say, which like I have no idea. I do know what it means, but it's so funny. She used to say, well, Bridge, you put in trash, you take out trash. So I guess good and bad. I don't know.
That's great advice. I think that's a good one. And I mean, given that it was such a personal experience for you all, and I can tell how much great chemistry you all have together, what are you feeling now that season 1 is done? It's streaming, people are watching it. How do you all feel?
I feel great.
Was it cathartic?
I feel phenomenal because I'm not giving mixed notes anymore.
But you feel relieved.
Yeah, no, I feel really happy, and I feel really proud of what we were able to do. And you know, it was a pretty ambitious thing that we set out to do, just on a logistical and kind of production level, that we were like making these mini movies every week, and
there are times
every week at a shoot.
The location changes on this show. You know, like you watch like more kind of traditional stuff, and you're like, yeah, they exist in like 4 locations the entire show. Like, how did we get to all these places? Yeah,
we made it happen. That's always been the problem, is like anytime it was a script I wrote, whether it was like the pilot or the 5th episode, it would be like, oh, it's a 30-page script with 57 scenes, and they're all like tiny and moving around. And anyway,
no, it's true. Sam and Sam can tell you why every single one of the scenes absolutely has to be done. So there's no cutting it down to 30.
We cut a lot of stuff.
Eventually you do jettison a lot.
Yeah.
And Anna, what did you learn from playing Darby? Did you learn something about yourself that was significant that you look back on now and you're like, yeah, I discovered that about myself?
I mean, I feel like with the whole drive of doing this kind of job, for me, for Bridget, for Sam, for everybody, is like, oh, this is how I learn. This is better than any self-help book. This is so incredible and cathartic. And it's kind of corny to say that, but especially playing a character over 10 years is so unique. And to have started out like, we were kind of joking about like, are you a Darby? Are you a Sarah? And yeah, I mean, there were lots of things that Darby does when she's young, that the challenge for me was like being honest about how bad it was and like how cringy and how locked inside yourself you are. And like you look at every interaction as like, what can that person do for me? Not in a literal creepy, Wall Street sense, just in a like, can you fix me? Like, how are you going to provide me validation and safety and support? And trying to be honest about that and lean into that and like acknowledge that was really uncomfortable but cathartic. And then by the end, I'm really trying to play the woman that I want to be, the kind of aspirational person. And that isn't like, not to shit on that show at all. It was fucking amazing. But not in like a aspirational Sex and the City way where it's like, oh, like my apartment rocks and I look fantastic, but like, oh, wow, like that would be the kind of inner life that I would want to have and I'm still striving to have, which is like, I'm so clear on what I want, who I am, and what my boundaries are that I can actually look at other people and go, oh, I'm not really thinking about what you can do for me. I'm just thinking about like maybe what I can do for you. Like not because I need to feel good about myself, like just because I think you're wonderful and I would like to make your life wonderful. And I can actually like approach those interactions in a really like honest way. So yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of really beautiful lessons for me as they made the show.
I love that. What about Sam and Bridget? What lesson did you take from this show?
I mean, there was so much. I think, obviously I learned so much just about filmmaking and running a television show and everything having to do with actually making the thing. But I don't know. I mean, I think as far as like reflection, and again, it's that funny thing where it just feels like we kind of put everything into it as we were going. And so as we're learning lessons, it's changing what happens in the show up until the last minute, up until the final scene of the finale. That was the last thing we shot right before everything shut down. That we were just trying to leave it all out on the floor and I guess I'm just trying to think of an answer. So.
No, it was good.
Nothing. I mean, nothing. Well, it's a lot of process. I mean, the show was hard in a way, like there were so many locations and there were so many scripts with 50 scenes that we wrote and truly felt like every single thing mattered. And, it's, for me, it's always as I get older, like how do I work and do the thing I love and also not like exhaust myself to the point where, I'm like dead at the end and need 3 months to recover. So like every time I come away from something, like I feel really proud of the show. I feel like we actually did what we set out to do. And there were moments where I was like, is this all going to come together? But it did. And, but it's just process. It's like, how do we, work more efficiently? How do we make more time for, to breathe and, have even more kind of magic come in and just kind of tweaking sort of how to run the writer's room, between the different departments and all of that. It's really, for me, it's always just kind of process and then, refining like, okay, what stories I want to tell, what I'd want to do next and where I'd want to put my energy. It's just kind of it's more of like a reassessment than a lesson learned, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And I think to add to that, like one thing that did just occur to me is just the idea that we, it's so kind of, all consuming to make a television show. And I think, what I imagined before it was an experience that I had. And what I think a lot of people imagine is just like you're harried and you have no time for anything else. And I think kind of to what Bridget was saying, like making a show about how kind of interpersonal connections are really all we have. I think in a weird way, pushed me in this direction of not like, oh, stop making television, it doesn't matter, but like it was kind of this like, don't forget that the people that you love are what is important and what matters, and that you need to like, you need to like put everything that you can into those relationships the same way you're putting everything that you can into this show, and just being able to see kind of like the purity of that and the purity of the love that we kind of were trying to depict, I think just made that, clearer than ever to me.
That was beautiful. Well, I'm so excited you guys got picked up for season 2. I just want to give you a quick applause for that, because when it ended, I was like, the journey cannot end here. So I know you can't give us spoilers or anything else, but for all the fans of this show, we're dying to know, what can you tell us about season 2?
I think,
I'll do some spoiler.
Like from the beginning, the idea for this show was to look at a life for a season and reset. And it's one of those things where obviously it was, amazing to build this character of Darby and this journey and to stick the landing in a way that I never thought, I never knew how we would do it. But at the same time, as daunting as it is to start over, or to reset, so to speak, to me, the ultimate power of the show always lied in our ability to do that, in our ability to kind of just show audiences, all these different ways to live and all these different people, and to dig as deep as we can into each one of them. And that, in this second season, and if we're lucky enough to make more than that, every time it will be looking at another walk of life and, again, just trying to dig as deep into those experiences as possible, so that we can remind the audience that kind of, everyone is that important, and that the sort of smallest things in our life are, big enough, these kind of movie moments or something.
And Anna, where would you like to see Darby go in season 2?
Well, Darby's in it for the long haul, so I don't know exactly like what where she's going to be at in her relationship, but I'm excited to see like how that one relationship continues to blossom.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so excited.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think like, another important part of it is that it's not like a lot of anthology shows where you kind of start over and there's no connections. One of the things we're very excited to do is kind of use New York and the ways that people, kind of crisscross in and out of each other's lives there, to kind of keep this next story and this next set of love stories in the same world as the season 1 stories, and that it feels like, okay,
Okay.
What did you say?
Somebody's ending up with Danny Two Phones. Somebody at some point in
Bring
some
Danny back.
Danny Two Phones is
Danny Two Phones.
Yeah, he's a favored candidate for a future season. But yeah, just wanting to have it all be in this kind of shared. Basically, we want to make like the lowest stakes shared universe possible.
We actually had a lot of questions on Twitter, and I'm going to get to these now. But one of the ones that I really loved was about season 2, and people want to know: is it going to be COVID related?
It's a good question.
2020, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think especially in our case, we were so specific about the timeline in season 1, and just trying to kind of take people back through the years that the show covers was really important to us. All the kind of details, and whether it's a song or a, like a certain basketball game that would have been playing, being able to really dig deep into that. And that being said, if it was just a COVID season, it'd be very boring. We're all tired. No one wants to watch a TV show that looks like this panel. I mean, they'll watch this panel because of course they will, but you know what I mean? And so, it's one of those things. I think we've talked about maybe doing an episode or something like that, but it was a funny thing too, where, for instance, we covered 2012 to 2020 in season 1, and obviously a big thing that happened in that span of time was Donald Trump being elected president of the United States, and that was something where we kind of have, like, for astute viewers, there's like tiny references here and there, but we kind of avoided it because it was just so big, and we didn't really care about it. I think kind of like Darby's wedding, we just didn't want to see it. And I wouldn't be surprised if going forward it's the same way, that we kind of are finding some way to work around that, so that the episodes don't have to be on Zoom.
That would be weird. All right, we got some more fun questions from the fans. What was the most fun scene to shoot?
I have an answer for this. Oh, you go. Yeah.
But then I want to hear yours. I mean, I'm glad that Zoe said it out loud, because I think otherwise it wouldn't occur to me to say this, that the scene where we're in bed and I'm convincing her to go to rehab, like that she turned halfway through that scene and was like, I'm having so much fun. And I was like, I am having so much fun. Because that's one of the weird, freaky things about my part of the job, where I'm like sobbing all day and I'm having a blast. And it's like exhausting. And there's like, you get very puffy, but it was like such a fun scene to shoot. And then I guess like my silly one would be the very last scene of principal photography, where we just added this little moment where we meet Magnus for the first time and he just like sits down on the couch, and poor Craig was directing that scene. And we were just losing our minds because it was the very last shot of the very last scene of the very last day of like 5 months of filming. And I, like, me and Zoe and Peter and Nick Thune just could not stop laughing. And I felt like Craig was like the substitute teacher who's like, now everybody, I mean, we were being absolute nightmares and we just couldn't, like, there was so much giddiness in the air because it was like, but then that's it. This is the end. And it was like, we kept like screwing it up so that it wouldn't be over.
We got a little punchy for sure. That was fun.
We sure did.
The first scene that comes to mind for me is a scene that was funny because of the way it came together, and then obviously because of like how much I love what we ended up with. But in episode 4, you know, we were trying to figure out, okay, how can we have a Darby Sarah scene that doesn't just feel like a normal sort of like friend check-in scene? And there were initial versions on a writing level that did feel like that, where it was, you know, Darby and Sarah having lunch together where Darby worked, or, you know, we ended up doing that scene elsewhere. But as we sort of tried to figure it out, we kind of kept chipping away and away and away at it until what we ended up with is this scene that I just love so much, where, you know, Darby's up in the middle of the night and she's doing work on her laptop and all the lights are out in the whole apartment. And Sarah comes home and she's, you know, had a little bit to drink and they're both just whispering. And there's something about that scene to me that just epitomizes everything that I am interested in and was trying to do with this show in terms of kind of like replicating like the lesser seen kind of, you know, smallnesses of life, or smallnesses, subtleties and nuances.
Folks, smallnesses.
Smallnesses.
Let's bring it in. Good.
But anyway, just being able to realize that's how the scene should be, and then just not even have to say anything to them, and just have Anna and Zoe lock in the way that they did, and you know, just that it just didn't feel like a scene to me. It just felt like a thing that was happening, which is, I think, what we were always striving for, and that's, to me, just the best example of it.
Mm-hmm. Bridget, your favorite scene?
Yeah, I mean, this is like a reason I should go to therapy, but I can't think of anything other than like all the things that were hard to shoot and like why they kind of like scarred me, or like I remember them so strongly. And I guess it's just kind of like in a weird way, like a metaphor for New York, because everything there is so, you know, I lived there for 12 years and I always say I lived there for like 24 years because it feels like everything's so crammed in and intense. But I remember there was a scene in St. Mark's, and it's actually the last scene of the pilot, and it was like 1,000 degrees. And we had like made snow, and poor Anna was like in a coat with a fake belly, and we're doing it. And like, we just made winter in the middle of Manhattan in August. Like, this is bananas. And then the other scene I remember that was like that was on top of the roof, the party scene, Danny Two Phones. The opposite was true. It was like so cold. These poor extras, everyone they just had to look like they were having fun. I'm like, how are we making this happen? It was so I just, yeah, those are two very locations.
I'm confused because I would have thought that your favorite scene would be the scene that we were in. They did a little surprise for old Anna. coming out of the therapist's office, and suddenly the next patient is there, and it's being played by Bridget, who is doing some prize acting by sitting on her chair with a magazine going,
The best.
Really, really just some beautiful, nuanced, natural acting.
And never let me live down my acting face.
Yes, acting face. This article.
The best is that
I actually was going to mention that,
But that was like a funny thing where I think, it maybe seemed like a prank, but it also was the result of like us doing that shot a few times, and then it's like take 4 or 5, and we're like, oh, there should be someone in the office. Who should it be? Because we're shooting it right now. And then just me going like, Bridget, please get in shot. And that time it worked. There were other times it didn't. But.
Well, that leads to a good next fan question, which was, what was your favorite thing about filming in New York City?
I mean, I've said this before, but honestly, I really loved just watching Sam be like the biggest like kid in a candy store. He was just so excited, especially even in the pilot. Like, of course, it's the scene that's not the show, but the pilot where we're like standing around St. Mark's and there's a snow machine and whatever. And it just felt like so exactly how you think of like movies get made, like there's snow and we're really on the street and like a bunch of actors like smoking cigarettes outside and like talking about their feelings. And Sam was just like perma-grit, like beaming. And then it's not even in the show, Sam. So I'm glad you had a couple like a year to digest that.
It's true. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, Sam.
I think Anna said it, but really what it is for all of us, I think, was trying to tap into our own memories in that city and our own sort of versions of the city and places we had been or places that had meant stuff to us. And so I think that was a really fun part that hopefully kind of converts into some sort of like emotional quality in the show where you can kind of feel that personal nostalgia and that kind of connection to these places, that it's not just, shooting at kind of the obvious places in New York, but that those were places that really kind of meant something to us.
Yeah, I love that. I felt like New York was another character in the show, for sure. I loved that part of it. Anna, this one's for you. Which one of Darby's relationships do you relate to the most?
That's so hard. I mean, like so many of them, and in like unexpected ways. Like there would be like the scene in the mattress store with Darby's mom, with the amazing Davis, where Darby's just like breaking down. Like I have a very different relationship with my mother, and it was kind of wild to me to, for me to read the script and feel like this is beautiful writing, but like I don't know this relationship very well. And so many people on set were like, "This is my mother." So I mean, I knew it was like honest and relatable, but I was like, I so have like such a different relationship with my mom. But it was really interesting to find like that scene was like, I know this word has been kind of co-opted, but like kind of like triggering, it was like, oh God, I've had this fight, like not with my mom, but that fight where you're just like, I mean, like a puddle of vulnerability and you're so exposed and every nerve is exposed. And the person is just going like, what is this? What is happening? And it's so awful and like invalidating and suffocating. And, so I guess like, it's hard to say because, I also don't want to, like, part of the whole point was like, we all gave a lot of like really personal details with certain elements of plausible deniability because like that's not about you. So the ones where I could go, I mean that one, I don't necessarily want to, but in every relationship.
And I love this question from one of the fans because this is something I thought about a lot too. It said, in the last scene of episode 10, the narrator said, Darby has found her person. Was she referring to Theo or Grant?
Definitely Grant. I mean, it's funny because that was the first time that I was like, oh, I guess it could be ambiguous. And when we were writing it, we were talking all about, the various outcomes of a story like this and how everyone's kind of seen every version. We've seen the version where the guy completes her, and we've seen the version where, it's just about her relationship with herself. And we've seen the version where it's, about the kid. It's not about the boyfriend or whatever. And I think we wanted to kind of move away from that by just putting it all in there, and that it's about her, it's about Theo, it's about Grant, and it's just about a life. It's about the fullness of a life and this kind of web of connections and but then very literally to me, the rest of that narration is about Grant and about this kind of, life she doesn't know they're going to have together. That was kind of our way to have our cake and eat it too, was to show them in kind of just like a real moment, still early in this connection, but kind of using the narrator to assure people that, there was kind of a whole other journey that was just starting for them.
Interesting. I love it. Okay, before we go, I'd love to know from each of you, for those people living under a rock who haven't started streaming Love Life, why should they start watching this show?
That's a good question.
You'll laugh, you'll cry, it'll take 10 years off your life. It's better than cats, it's better than sex, it's better than chocolate. What are you waiting for? What are you doing with your life?
Can't beat that. Hard to beat that.
Yeah.
Bridget,
That might
why
be-
do people watch it?
I don't know. It's validating. I think people's romantic lives and their lives are so checkered and strange, and the paths are so not normal. They're circuitous and they're troubled. And I think it's validating for people to watch it. And I think a lot of people have been saying, oh my God, that feels like me. There's so many things that I did that Darby did and other characters did.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. I feel so connected to this story. I was saying that I haven't felt this attached to characters since Sex and the City. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Anna, Sam, and Bridget, this was a fantastic panel. Thank you for people that gave us the questions today and for everyone watching. And if you haven't, start streaming on HBO Max, Love Life. Okay, thanks guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.